who was the bookie, who was clearly probably had to deal with the police. So everything else was completely shut down. There were people across the street. We do not believe they spoke English or any language. And we got a hold of a laser once from the physics lab. And the coherent light sources are very interesting because, that beam, when you shoot it, it doesn't really expand like a flashlight. It's still a little red dot, these red light. And so we would shoot this beam into their apartment and torment them. All of a sudden there'd be this light just like beaming around their wall, and it would disappear. And they go, "Wow, am I freaking out or what?" I mean, we don't really know. We never talked to them. We're just imagining what's going on in their mind.
So time off for you guys was basically torturing anybody that you could get your hands on.
we would play pranks on these guys.
One time, still prank around today.
Yeah, we still prank around today. But one prank I do remember at that apartment was that one of the guys had a girlfriend, and she made a really natural apple pie, and it was a whole wheat crust, and I swear you couldn't bite through it.
Oh, really?
And we decided to share that with the neighbors.
It was just really hard. Oh, you gave them like the worst pie they could ever have?
Well, what we did was we put it out on the doorstep, and I think we had taken white out, and we had decorated the top of the pie slices. I don't know. We were weird. We put some kind of really strange words on the top of this pie crust, and the neighbors came over. And, I think the reason we did this is because if you didn't scare your neighbors, you were at risk of being, broken into and everything stolen. So we, on a regular basis, did things that made them worry about messing with us. So
that's actually a pretty good strategy for almost any neighborhood.
I think so.
Really? if you think about it, if you come off like you're the heavy, they're going to back down right away.
It makes me really glad that Chris wasn't my neighbor.
Yeah.
Well, you got to understand, a little red dot on your wall nowadays means someone has a scope and they're trying to take you out, right?
That's right.
Yeah, but no one had a laser back then. We stole a laser from the physics lab. There was no one sitting around there with little pointers saying, "Yeah, there's a little beam." We were 20 years before you would see beams of light, coming around at you.
So it could be aliens. They didn't know what was going on.
When these people are walking down the street and there's a red dot dancing around their feet, and they're just looking all around, freaking out of their gourd. I mean, this is otherworld kind of stuff.
They think some UFO is circling and getting ready to beam them up or something like that.
Yeah,
and it's a given they're intoxicated in this neighborhood.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Right.
I remember passing a final and just skipping and coming home and just smiling and being all happy. And I passed someone, and she just looked at me and grinned with her 3 teeth and her paper bag and said, "You too?" Wow, I'm drinking too,
Yeah.
I was like, wow.
Very nice.
Good neighborhood.
So how long were you living up there as a Troilet?
As a Troilet, I lived, that's not fair. We lived 1 year at the dorm, 1 year in our fraternity before it got shut down, and then 2 years downtown in Troy, close to Emmerd Willard. I was a Zeta Psi brother, and we shut down. We were the biggest rush they had in a long time, which should have helped them, but it was such an animal house that we actually, they shut it down. I remember our grand piano was taken to the second floor, shoved out the window, and landed on the front doorstep. I know it sounds really bad, and just laid there for months. There was no glass in the whole fraternity. There was plastic because it was cold in the winter, but that's because they would practice their hockey in there. And there was no furniture because they needed firewood.
Right.
And the neighbors were afraid of us. God, actually, this is really bad. At the time, it just seemed normal. And but anyway, we were a really out of control fraternity. The kind of parties they would throw. Oh, they had the Hairy Buffalo, where you just brought alcohol. It didn't matter what it was. It all got thrown into a garbage pail. They threw a big chunk of dry ice in there, and they threw a bunch of Hawaiian Punch, and people would drink it. And everything got thrown in there, no matter what it was, and that was called the Hairy Buffalo.
Pretty.
And somewhere around midnight, everybody had to go walk through the local, what was it? God, I'm having a space moment. Cemetery.
Right.
And it was just kind of weird stuff with the fraternity. That fraternity ended at the end of sophomore year, and then I went down to Troy to live the life of working or living over a junkie, or not a junkie, but a bookie.
Oh, right. Okay. Yeah, get it straight, Chris. Which is it?
I know. I didn't have lunch today, so I'm blood sugaring down on you. I'll have to.
Oh, that's not good.
Ginger brew.
You got to eat. You got to have a nutritious and delicious lunch. You know, lunch is the most important meal of the day, boys and girls. And take it from Uncle Chris. He'll tell you, because he's paying for it. Aren't you, Uncle Chris?
That's right. Listen to me. Just don't do what I do.
All right. You're on Mark Mercer's Loving, Caring, and Sharing. It is Friday night, and we've got Chris Reed with us. Chris, thanks again for taking time out and joining us. I appreciate it.
Hey, my fun.
Hey, now, before the break, we were talking about, you and the Merry Pranksters up there in Troy, and so you were finishing up college up there, and what was going on as far as prospects for employment? Did you have any hooks on the line? Were you just kind of feeling it out, or did you have a specific goal in mind?
Wow, that's a great question. What the hell did I do for a job out of college?
Yeah, everybody getting out of college. So now what are you going to do? I don't know. I'm going to go be a dishwasher at a restaurant.
You know, I went. I applied at a chemical engineering firm in Kansas City, where my folks were living in Leavenworth. My dad was at the Army base in Leavenworth, so I don't remember if it was hard or easy, whether the economy was in a good place. It was 1980. Mm-hmm. And I got pulled into oil and gas, specifically into liquefying natural gas, LNG.
Okay.
I was a personable guy, right. And they said, "Look, we have a technology that we share with Kobe Steel in Japan,
mm-hmm.
and the guy who has all the technology, it's all in his freaking head, and nobody can stand him." Or get him out of it, or get him from telling stories, because he's about to retire and we're about to lose all this information. And they gave me the gig to sit there and to get out of him the skill set and the information and how to work the programs he had created on the computer, et cetera, to design up LNG plants.
That is a strange job description.
Yeah, but over 6 months, I was able to become the expert in LNG, and
so you decoded this guy. Is that what it is? You decoded.
Yeah. I was able to listen to him, but then gently bring him back to focus. But was this before Alzheimer's was discovered? Yeah, something like that. I mean, it wasn't really Alzheimer's. He was still a very brilliant guy, but he probably knew what he was doing a little bit. There's a lot of job security and not anyone else knowing how to do what he did.
Yeah, right.
But it was time for his retirement. He was clearly leaving, and I got to hear about his life and knew too much more than I wanted to know about all the different engineering things he did. But he did tell me some interesting stuff. He worked as a consultant in Russia.
Really?
I remember this one story. And he said they have these factories, mm-hmm. and the factories were given quotas.
Right.
And this isn't working by free market forces. This is just like, communism. And they would just decide, we are going to have 10,000 metric tons of locks made next year.
Okay.
Now the engineers would hear that, and he'd be working with these engineers, and they'd be working on the lock. And the guys would come up with this lock. He said, "Guys, what the hell are you doing? That lock weighs 10 kilos.
Right.
It's bigger than, you can't even hang it on the door. You can't even use it." They said, "Look, we're not here for the efficiency. We're here to hit 10,000. So those locks are going to weigh as much as possible, so we don't have to make so many of them."
Mm-hmm.
So that's communism.
Yeah, no kidding. Yeah.
This is how communism works, versus the 10 companies in the lock business trying to get that lock as cheap to make as possible, making it small, svelte, whatever the hell.
And turn a profit.
Yeah, and turn a profit. And it really, so that some of that, he had an influence on me. He really, I got to understand from a deeper level what, wasn't working about that economy, and surely explained later on in life when the Berlin Wall comes down.
Right, yeah.
I saw the Berlin Wall when it was up.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, when you were a kid. We were living in Germany. We all went to Berlin. The old man didn't go, though, because You had to take a train. We weren't flying at that time because it was expensive, and you're taking the train. They could grab a colonel off of a train because you're going through Eastern Germany, so it wasn't a really smart idea.
Right. There was a lot of that kind of stuff going on still, that cloak and dagger crap.
Yeah, but the family went. And actually, my old man, he flew in because you weren't taking planes off the sky. You know, it was a worry with the train, so he didn't fly in. But anyway, when the Berlin Wall was up, one of the things you did was you threw your trash over it.
Right.
Because you didn't have to clean it, and they wouldn't go into that zone. So everybody in West Berlin who lived up against the wall, they had a big, apartment building wall right behind you. They would throw their trash over it. Because anyway, it was just kind of a funny thing, and of course, guys were always there. It was a big no man's land, a lot of barbed wire and
scary looking.
Yeah, scary looking stuff. And all right, where were we?
Yeah, well, let's see. You were learning all this stuff from this guy that was over in Russia.
So I became the world. There was there's three technologies: Air Products, Air Liquide, a French company. Air Products, a U.S. company, and this little company with this genius guy, and the third technology partnered up with Kobe Steel, and we had a viable technology that was competitive in certain environments.
Right.
And so I was one of the world's leading experts in LNG.
Really?
I was the only guy, in a way, who knew how to do the design of this particular style plant. Really? It wasn't very energy efficient, but it was very stable, and it was much less capital cost for equipment.
So it was a moneymaker.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, if you were going to do it, Exxon came to us. I remember one of the first gigs I had was to create a barge mounted. I was not doing it. This guy was teaching me to do it. A barge mounted LNG, a gas liquefaction plant, 1.2 billion standard cubic feet a day, which is huge. Big gas field right off of Vietnam. They were going to build these barges, and they were going to float them in, and they were going to liquefy natural gas.
Did you say billion?
Yeah, these are big plants. This is huge. It was like, Vietnam was saying to Exxon, you have these leases, use them or lose them. And so we came up with this whole study, and it was really fascinating. We're using 15 747 jet engines to run our compressors.
Holy cow.
Yeah, the reason we were doing it is we could generate about 50,000 horsepower per compressor, and anywhere in the world you could say my plane is down, 24 hours, they'll drop in a new motor, a new engine.
Wow.
So they were easy to do.
Wow, that had to be fascinating stuff to be part of.
Yeah, it was as a kid, so it was very heady stuff. I did that for 5 years. Actually, I did that for 3 years at that company, and then I just left.
And just walked out?
I walked off the job.
Really?
And I went to Fairfield, Iowa.
Wait, what was the motivation behind that? That'd be did you just wake up one day and said, forget it, I'm done with this? See,
I started meditating in college.
Oh, really?
And I started at 1977. No, not 77. Yeah, 77, because I graduated in 80. Mm-hmm. And I had been meditating for about 4 or 5 years.
All right.
And they had this big get-together in Fairfield, Iowa, which is the headquarters for the TM movement in the U.S. They have a college they bought there, and everybody moved there. And it's actually a functioning college today. Uh-huh. And they were doing great experiments in human consciousness.
Okay.
And the Maharishi had a theory that if you got a whole lot of people together to meditate in a group, that even though it wasn't a huge number of people on a percentage basis of the populace, they're conscious. Everybody is a conscious being, and everybody's consciousness is kind of intermingling with each other. It's not like I'm having your thoughts exactly, but sometimes there's a kind of a feeling. Everybody's kind of down. Everybody's kind of up. There's times when the world's a little more buoyant, and it feels like.
What about the unconscious people?
The what?
What about the unconscious people?
Well, to degree, there's degrees of consciousness. That's another TM thing. You become more conscious as you meditate.
Okay, gotcha.
And if you do good things, you eat healthier, you get in shape, you get your physical system and you have more clarity. If you burn yourself out, do too much drugs, So this was a real opposite to my earlier childhood.
Right. Yeah. Okay.
And I